Story 1: The Debt Abyss. These are my words. Often I sink into this emptiness. Honestly, I can barely find the strength to pull myself together for the sake of the children. But even here, the question haunts me: what can I give them? Because of me, they have nothing left. You might say love. Yes, I love them very much. And they love their mother too, not understanding why she often cries. 4 years ago, I couldn't have imagined any of this happening. We lived comfortably. One family approached us, asking to borrow 200,000 rubles. We didn't have that amount at the time, but they asked us to borrow it from someone else on their behalf. I thought it was foolish and refused. My husband threw a fit, saying we needed to help them. They wouldn't get the money, but we could. The argument escalated to the point where I took the children and went to my mom's. After some time, we reconciled. But soon that family visited us again, asking to borrow at least 100,000 rubles. At the same time, my husband liked a car that was damaged in an accident, but could be repaired, and it had no mileage as it was new. We turned to a person and borrowed 100,000 rubles for that family, and my husband took 50,000 for himself. The money was borrowed with interest. For 2 months, we paid as required. Then those who owed us started delaying their repayments, and we had to cover for them. Then my husband had to borrow another 90,000 rubles. Our acquaintances repaid us poorly. The debt due to interest became unbearable. First, I took a bank loan and repaid 150,000. Then my husband took a loan and we repaid another 350,000. In total, we repaid 500,000 rubles for a borrowed 240,000. But an acquaintance told us we still had interest left, which also accrued interest. I wrote a promissory note for the remaining amount, naturally, without taking any more money. The amount grew, and that family stopped paying us entirely. We couldn't handle the loans anymore. Initially we paid, but then we ran out of money. In 2 years, the remaining interest grew to over 500,000 rubles. We moved from the district to the city. Staying in the district was impossible due to gossip and rumors spreading instantly. The bank seized all our property, took away all the equipment. We hit rock bottom and abandoned our business. All enforcement orders are now with bailiffs. We pay little by little, economize on everything, and don't buy anything interesting but unnecessary. We work quietly but unofficially. We pay rent for an apartment and raise our children. But the bailiffs only deal with the banks, and from the official bailiff service website, I found out that the person we borrowed 240,000 rubles from sued me. The trial already took place without me. I finally started thinking clearly and went to that family who owed us, but they wouldn't even open the door for me. I'm at a dead end, but I still decide to file an appeal. I find a lawyer who says I'll lose. After several sessions where I tried to prove that the promissory note was moneyless, I lost the case. Now, on top of everything, I owe for the court costs. How do I live now? The bailiffs will soon come to the rented apartment, and I'm afraid they'll take my son's computer, which he needs for school. How can I even look my children in the eyes? I can't live like this anymore. Story 2: My story of a wild youth, and why the boomerang always comes back. I was 17 when I got married. I was born into a well-off family. There were problems, but overall, my parents tried to give me the best. My father worked a lot, so I barely saw him, and my mother was a homemaker who raised me as best she could. For some reasons, I was afraid of my father, but I always rebelled against him. It was childishness, what can I say? At 15, I fell deeply in love with a guy who was 2.5 years older. At 16, we started a serious relationship. My mother understood and only asked me to be careful, but when my father accidentally caught us, there was a terrible scandal. They wanted to jail the guy, but I left home with him. I won't drag out the story. Instead, at 17, I married this guy, and by summer, I gave birth to a daughter. He was in the army for a year, and we raised the child with my mother. By that time, my parents had divorced. When my husband returned from the army, I moved in with him, and we began to settle down. Financially, it was very tough. I had just finished school and enrolled in a distance learning program. There was almost no work for me, and the pay was low, and my husband couldn't find a job either. Then my father helped him get a decent job. We started living more or less okay. We didn't live luxuriously, but we weren't poor either. I also began getting good orders. I worked as a designer on the side and started receiving job offers. I was waiting for my daughter to be accepted into kindergarten so I could start a regular job. Everything would have been fine, but my husband often drank and got jealous. He didn't hit me, but humiliated me, twisted my arms, and choked me just because he was drunk and jealous. I loved him and endured it. This went on for 2 years. My daughter was accepted into kindergarten, and I got a job. Gradually, I started earning as much as my husband, then a little more. We furnished the apartment. But then, due to his drinking, my husband was fired from his job. He felt incredibly guilty and stopped drinking. I accepted this, found myself a couple of side jobs and managed on my own. My husband didn't actively search for a job, my earnings were enough. Meanwhile, he took care of the household and was generally well behaved. Everything suited me until, after about 3 months of this life, he started drinking again. After a while, I realized that at 20 years old, I was working 4 jobs, ruining my health, and still regularly getting flack for it. At some point, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed up the child and left one day. I immediately filed for divorce. I moved in with my mother, taking nothing but my laptop and phone. My husband made sure I got fired from my main side jobs. The first job didn't need me either. They took me on for a project that ended, so did the job. My ex-husband didn't provide financial help. I started from scratch. At that time, my mother was also not doing well financially, so I had to support us. It was tough. I got a job at a hookah bar, working nights and doing side jobs during the day wherever I could. The income for the two of us, my daughter and me, was decent, about 60,000 rubles. But my mother heavily guilted me and I left all my salary with her. I only spent on cigarettes and transportation to work. My mother ran the household and I earned money. It wasn't a bad arrangement, except for one thing: my mother wouldn't let me go anywhere. If I was late, there was a scandal. If I had suitors, she quickly got rid of them. Building any relationship was unrealistic. I wanted to move to another apartment thanks to my father, who left 2 apartments for my mother and me, but my mother didn't allow it. She rented it out. She also didn't let me rent another place, saying, "You work nights. Where will you leave the child?" At 21, I didn't want to lock myself up. But there was no way out at that moment. After leaving my husband, I didn't want to go through another scandal with my mother. I was invited back to my previous job and I started taking fewer night shifts. At my previous job, I had a friend 7 years older, and we had been friends for about 2 years. He saw my marriage and divorce. He began to support me emotionally and helped. In general, he was a wonderful guy. At some point, he started spending more time at my place, helping carry groceries, agreeing to assemble furniture, etc. He also helped my mother and she liked him a lot. Eventually, my mother invited him to a family celebration, and when he proposed we start dating, my mother strongly advised me to accept. The guy was great, but not my type at all. He was a friend. But wanting to break free from my mother's clutches and go out somewhere besides work, I agreed. Moreover, we were good friends and he didn't push me for anything special. We dated for about 4 months and he proposed we move in together. I agreed. It was good and comfortable with him, but I didn't have romantic feelings for him. But I was amazed at how carefully he treated me and my child, how he tried for us, took on several jobs, and made me take care of myself, so I left all my side jobs. Compared to my first marriage, this was very appealing. I was no longer solving problems, he was. He understood that I didn't love him but said he only wanted support and loyalty from me. He believed love would come naturally. After a year of living together, we moved to a more spacious apartment from a communal apartment to a 2-bedroom, and the apartment was in our ownership. We changed cars and started living well. I finished my higher education and the guy suggested I take a year off. I left work and began helping him with his business. He asked that my daughter call him dad, and he treated her like his own. He loves my daughter more than her biological father did. We didn't plan to have children, so I immediately started taking birth control pills. And overall, life seemed perfect. The family was good, peaceful and cozy. I was loved, respected and valued. For the first time, everything was for me: no fights, no violence, no jealousy, no control. I could meet friends without being nagged. But we were vastly different. I loved socializing and traveling while he was a homebody. And over 6 years of living together, he still adores me, but I never fell in love. I appreciate and respect him, but I don't love him. 6 months ago, due to certain side effects from taking birth control pills for 5 years, I had to stop. And if before life seemed conditionally normal, we lived like friends under one roof, sometimes slept together, etc., now my libido has returned. And sometimes when I look at men of my type, I feel weak at the knees. Recently, I caught myself liking a guy from our mutual company, and I know he likes me too. I can leave, break up, I have no obligations to the person I live with, but I would feel guilty. He has done a lot for me, brought me to my senses, and restored me after a failed marriage. I also fear hurting my daughter, as she considers him her father and loves him. Given what she went through with her biological father, I have no right to take away her sense of security. What if I break up, and he no longer communicates with my daughter as he does now? My ex-husband did exactly that. On the other hand, it's wrong to torment him and myself. He doesn't get the love he deserves, and I sometimes feel a strong need for another man sexually, and it's only a matter of time before I give in. I can't lock myself up at home, I won't lie, and my partner won't tolerate infidelity. I can't go back to taking pills and living like before, no libido, no desire, but managing household stuff together for at least a year due to health reasons. Trying to have sex with my partner the way I like won't work. We have different preferences, and I simply don't want him. I can force myself and even live normally afterward, but I won't enjoy it. Now I'm unsure what to do and how to proceed. I talked to my partner, tried to gently explain that my desire is returning, but he thinks I should be pouncing on him. I try to explain, but he doesn't understand and thinks I should desire everyone, not just specific people. I don't want to cheat and hide it, but sometimes I feel a deep longing for another man. In general, the situation is complicated. I understand you might judge me, but that's how it is. Story 3: The evil I caused came back to me. My husband has a mistress, and he doesn't even hide it anymore. He pays no attention to me, often doesn't come home at night, and everything I do irritates him. It hurts and upsets me a lot, but I endure it because I know I deserve it. I was once the mistress of a married man, and now the evil I caused his wife has come back to me. But I didn't think about it back then. We worked together. He was my boss. I fell in love, and I thought it was her fault if she couldn't keep her husband. I never saw his wife, but I knew from colleagues at work that she knew everything and was suffering greatly. Our affair ended as suddenly as it began when I found out that his wife, despite his vows of love and promises to divorce soon, was expecting their third child. I had enough sense to quit my job and not insist on a divorce. Over time, everything faded. I got married, had a daughter, and almost forgot about the past until I had to face infidelity myself. Now I want to call that woman, apologize for everything, and repent, but I'm afraid she won't understand me. Maybe everything is fine with them now and she has calmed down, and I would only remind her of myself and cause her more pain. Perhaps she once wished I would experience what she did, and now it has come true. It might seem strange, but I don't curse my husband's mistress or wish her any harm so she doesn't face the same retribution that I did. I've decided that I won't try to keep him. If he's happier with her, he can go. Story 4. A complex boy turned family tyrant after marriage. I want to share the story of my friend. In school, she was an excellent student, a beautiful and sociable girl. Everyone thought that Allah definitely had a chance to marry well. She was always surrounded by the attention of boys. Among her admirers was our mutual classmate Vishya, a boy from a poor, large family, always poorly dressed, with unlearned lessons. But the boys in the class didn't avoid him because of this. He was just too withdrawn and kept away from everyone. He couldn't take his eyes off Allah, always following her after school, but from a distance. In the last school year, he spent all evening standing under her house, looking at the windows of her apartment. We laughed, but my friend's mother said that this was true love and there was no need to look for someone rich and successful who would reproach you for every penny. When her daughter said that marriage should be about love, her divorced mother just waved her hand and said, "The important thing is that your husband loves you, not that you love him." I won't go into details. I'll just say that Vishya pursued my friend for 3 more years. She was studying to be an economist, and he would silently meet her at the bus stop, walk her home, and occasionally give her flowers. She got used to it and started seeing him as part of her life. Eventually, they got married. For all our classmates, it was a shock. Many didn't believe that such a beauty chose this timid and strange guy over all her other admirers. Allah started working at a bank, first as a cashier and then in a higher position, earning well, while Vishya, having no education, survived on odd jobs. Allah took out a loan from work, bought a 3-room apartment, and had a daughter. We met less and less, mostly talking on the phone. I thought my friend had become conceited and didn't impose myself on her. Until one day I met her mother. She burst into tears and started telling me how her daughter lived and how she regretted pushing her into this marriage with her words. This complex boy had become a true despot in the family. At first he was insanely jealous of his wife over everyone, forbidding her from meeting friends. Even with me, he knew me well. Then he started raising his hand against her, and when their daughter turned 3, he got himself a mistress. It's understandable. Allah dressed him up, bought him a car, and got him a job in security. He threatened that if she decided to divorce, he would take the apartment and their daughter. I couldn't believe it. I called her and suggested we meet. After long persuasion, my friend agreed. This was no longer the beautiful girl, but a middle-aged woman with a dull gaze. Nothing reminded me of the old Allah. She was so frightened that I could barely convince her that he couldn't take her child and the apartment would be divided equally. Her mother and I found a good lawyer who agreed to help with the divorce. Now my friend and her child live with her mother, afraid to even go outside, waiting for the court. Story 5. How to find your place in life. I am 22 years old and I am facing the following problem. I can't find myself and I worry that I'll spend my whole life bouncing from one thing to another. At the moment I work as a lifeguard. I really enjoy it, but I understand that it's not my ultimate goal. I am a versatile person and I like many things. I've read books on this topic, watched various videos about finding oneself, but none of it has led anywhere. I turned to Socionics and determined my type, which is EC ethical sensory extrovert, but I still can't choose from the suggested professions. I like many things, and it's very hard to make a decision. Last summer, I decided to drop everything and go to a military school, but I ended up coming back. Then I decided to become an entrepreneur, trying one business after another, but I kept quitting because I would lose interest. Again, in business, I faced the same problem of deciding what to do. I have been thinking a lot about this lately, and it prevents me from taking any steps. But amidst all this, I have a goal to live my life in such a way that I leave behind as much good as possible, so that I continue to live after my death. To achieve this, I even write poems and songs, though it's a pity that nature didn't bless me with a good voice. But with my uncertainty, I doubt I will achieve much.